Well, today is a true Wednesday walkabout where I feel like there is a marked difference from what was going on last week. And I'm going to talk about several things that I think you are going to want to pay attention to. But I'm going to go ahead and show you the products that I used first of all, so it's easy for you to find the link that Stuart will put above, or you can always go to the description box below or find them on Instagram. So I love Espoma Holly Tone, and you'll notice that it's for evergreens and azaleas. I also use it on my camellias. So this is basically for anything that likes a rather acidic environment. And I really am hoping my Encore azaleas, now that they're a little bit more established, will bloom pretty heavily. So yesterday, after I did my cleanup, and I'll show you how I did it, I did sprinkle some Holly Tone because, Stuart, let's just pray that we get the rain that they have promised tonight and no ice. Maybe I'd even take snow, but hopefully some rain. Now, I cleaned up a lot of the leafy blanket that was in the entirety of the front beds, and this is one of my favorite things to use, you guys, and it's one of these small expandable rakes. Now, I like it, and mine's really old, so it probably needs a little bit of WD-40. But what it can do is expand to a different length, but also to a different width of the tines. And I really like this because I can be very delicate with it. And I'll show you what I mean once we get out into the yard. And I can also use it, it's not prohibitively heavy, so I can't use it as kind of just a little hand rake. And I can be very delicate and very careful with it as I clean up around tender seedlings and the tips of bulbs that are coming out. And speaking the tips of bulbs that are coming out, my pots of bulbs that I was planting, my container plantings of all different kinds of bulbs, lots of hyacinths, daffodils, tulips, those are starting to come out from the garage because they are definitely showing evidence of sprouting. Now, I'm in zone 7B, so these are going to sprout faster and more quickly than if you are farther up north, but it's time for me to bring these out. I'm a little bit nervous that squirrels are going to try digging around in here a little bit, but so far so good. The other reason I pulled these out, in addition to them needing the warmth and the sunlight, is that they also needed a good watering, so I did that yesterday. The other thing that I did was I really cleaned up my window box. Doesn't it look nice, Stuart? I need positive reinforcement. So I cleaned out all of the leaves that I had blown on there as mulch. I gave it a little bit of an organic granular fertilizer. I cleaned up some of the pansies, and you can see in here, Stuart, if you don't mind showing, there are all sorts of hyacinths, and I can't remember if these are Yellowstone, City of Harlem, I can't remember exactly, but these are color blends bulbs, and I think I also have some sailboat daffodils that are coming up. Those are color blends bulbs, and I'll put a link to color blends at the bottom, and you can kind of see what they look like. And then also tucked in here are other things that I hope will emerge. I cut them back really hard, and that is some kale that is still showing a few signs of life, and also some other, I've got some Montrose white Nepeta in here. Again, it may or may not come back. If it does not come back, if those things don't come back, then I will tuck some other things in here in their place and in those voids, like some ruby red cabbages, maybe some lettuces or things. But by the time these violas and pansies put on growth and all of the leafy foliage of the bulbs, this will pretty much be consumed. So even though I'm a little bit nervous also that we get a cold spell, even if it gets really pretty cold, you guys, don't be concerned. Your bulbs that are just starting to show up, they can handle really cold temperatures just fine. In fact, I would be a little bit nervous if I didn't see signs of them right now. So that is my question of the day. If you planted bulbs, are you starting to see evidence of them? Tell me what your zone is and how far up out of the ground are they? Because I have found, because it's been so dry, that mine have been a little bit slow to erupt from the surface. And these, by the way, you guys, these are all my QVC baskets that are part of my QVC line, and Stuart and I are in full QVC mode for the next 24 hours. I think I'm even on a panel in the middle of the night showing off some QVC products. And while the large baskets in particular, while these are back in stock, if you guys, and they're on sale, so there's my sales pitch. If you guys, want some of them, then you better get them fast, because I don't know how much longer they're going to be available. If I am distracted, it's because there's so much wind going on that I'm just kind of paying attention that nobody is getting. Nobody's getting knocked over. The other thing that I'm going to have to do pretty soon, like I staked this guy yesterday, this arbor vitae yesterday, and it is already blown over, so I'm going to fix it. I've brought out these beautiful hellebores that I got at Trader Joe's, and I'm going to plant them out hopefully later today, while it is still while it's still warm, but before the rain. And remember, these are cool season lovers, so they will like that. But look at how beautiful they still are. They're just really going strong. And I'll show you where I planted some Trader Joe's specimens that I got last year. So now let's go out into the garden. Even though some of these have lots of winter burn, I'm not sure if they are really most sincerely dead, or they're just faking dead, or if branches are dead and the rest is still okay. I will know that as time goes by, and it may be that these have to be removed and replanted. And if I do, I may not transplant them with some kind of topiary or something. I might plant them with something that's a little more ebullient, a little more fluffy and cascading. I'm just not really sure right now. What I am going to do is be very respectful, I should say, of the notes that I made last year, was that I don't want things to get too cluttered and I don't want to have too many pots. So that is the lens through which I am looking at everything this year, including what plants I've got in the greenhouse that may or may not come back with me this year, because I may not put them out in the garden. Here are some more little tulips in here. I think these might be Smooch, a color blends variety that I really like. And then let's come this way. Stuart, if you don't mind going ahead and walking out there and showing people something pretty while I get my little rake. So last week when I talked about cleaning up the leafy mulch, I said that I was doing it in a way where I was prioritizing the removal of the leaves. And what did I mean like that? Well, some things that it is still really mulching and I'm afraid of a late hard freeze, then I'm going to leave, maybe not all of them, but I'm going to leave a good bit of the leaves still around them. So even though I went ahead and I cut back my line-bound spirea, I'm going to go ahead and leave some of this leaf litter in place so that it kind of protects it from the cold. The same with all of my Encore azaleas that I planted back here because they already have buds on them, you guys. And also I think I'm starting to see signs of 2 camellias from Southern Living Plants that I thought I had lost. They will also benefit from that, that holly-tone plant food. Now here was my procedure on fertilizing. So, one of the reasons I wanted to go ahead and remove a lot of the leaves in these areas was because if I threw out that granular holly tone it would just sit on top of the leaves, and it wouldn't penetrate down in the soil and really do any good to the plants themselves. So I wanted to expose enough of the soil so there would be good fertilizer to soil contact. And that was true if I threw some on my evergreens, because it's also good for evergreens, or just my azaleas, camellias, my yews, anything like that. I would make sure that I removed some of the leaves and any mulch around that, so there would be really good fertilizer to soil contact. And then, because it's been really, really dry, I took, Stuart, hold on there. I'm not prepared, you guys. I got one of these just very inexpensive circular, this one is metal, I think I got this one at Home Depot or Walmart, sprinklers, and I attached it to my hose end, and then I, in very dedicated areas, really, really deep watered that zone, wherever it was that I had put the fertilizer. Now, I did that for a couple of different reasons, you guys, and I'll try to also put a link to one of these. Number one, it's been really windy, and if I used my regular in-ground irrigation system, it would just blow all over the place, and it would just waste water, and it wouldn't get dedicated to the ground below. This way, I can put it on a low tension, on a low water pressure, so that the area of the radius is not real large, and it immediately goes down to the root zone and makes soil contact without blowing all over the place. The other reason is just because this is just really flexible for me, and I can move it from one zone to another. Now, one thing that I always do when I put a sprinkler on like this, so I don't forget to turn it off, is I put some kind of sticky note either in my kitchen, or most frequently I will turn on an alarm on my phone. I will tell Siri to set an alarm or a timer or something of that nature, so when it goes off, I know to turn off my sprinkler so that I don't water excessively, and more importantly, I don't leave it on all night or all day because I've gone on to some other project and I have just forgotten about it. So that is another reason that I use that. Now, I also prioritized removing lots of the leaves from my hellebores, because I showed you this last week, but look at how heavily they're starting to bloom. Stuart, can you tell a big difference between last week and this week? Look at how heavily they're starting to bloom, and what that does is it exposes the buds to more sunlight so that they will then come into flower. And look, there's been all sorts of honeybees hovering around actually this entire area. There's another one over there. Plus, it also exposes all of these little tiny hellebores that have just gone nuts in here, and I'm going to be transplanting lots of these to the back in an area that I'll show you. So over here, Stuart, you can see that I cleaned up a lot of the leaves in here that I sprinkled, and also kind of raked in that granular fertilizer, all in anticipation of the rain that it has promised we're going to get tonight. But look at this. As I was cleaning up stuff, Stuart, I had another hellebore over here. This was one of mine from Trader Joe's last year. I didn't even realize it was back here. Look at that. Look at all those buds. And I wouldn't have even known that had I not kind of cleaned up this leafy area. Remember, those hellebores, they like the cold weather, so they'll be fine even if it snows. And I think it's supposed to get down in the mid-20s, but I don't think too much colder than that. And that's okay. My garden can handle that. It's not going to be like it was, hopefully, last year, where it got down to like -13. Now, if you'll come this way, you can see that I've installed a couple more stepping stones. I've got a few more to install over this way. And while this isn't very exciting, it nevertheless was something that needed to be done. And I showed you last week how there were a lot of clustered nanonandinas that needed to be relocated around in here. And so all of these have been transplanted over in here. I watered them in really, really well, and now it will serve to hold in the soil on this slope. And I also gave the hollies a feed with holly tone. And now I get, and I don't think, it's one thing that's beautiful about this year, I don't think these nanonandinas have ever turned this beautiful of a reddish purple. I think they might be fire powers, and there's probably some pink blush from Southern Living, I'm not sure. But when you look at it from this way, you can see there's a kind of a whole strip of red that now looks like it is, from a design perspective, that this is filled in and completed finally after all of the damage from last year. And then I just started cleaning up some of the leaves in this area. Obviously I've got a lot more. I'm not taking them off of my little roses here yet. I'm going to leave them around that, and I will come back a little bit later to remove that. Now, the other benefit of that is that not only does it provide protection and protective mulch for those things that may start coming out in our wacky roller coaster weather, where it's really warm one day and then it's really cool, really cold the next. So it will not only protect them, but it also helps me by dividing up all of the work that I need to do. So one day I'm concentrating on one area, and another day I'm concentrating on another area. And as I told you earlier, this is something that I kind of like to do myself, because it might expose little seedlings and other things of a delicate nature underneath there that I want to make sure are not destroyed by an overly aggressive power blower. And then it seems like all of a sudden I'm starting to see tulip bulbs coming out from everywhere. Hello, Mr. Squirrel. Stuart, there's that squirrel over there. It looks like it's getting ready to get into some trouble. Fortunately, I have squirrels, but I don't have rabbits, which can be really problematic as well. So lots more cleanup to do. The next big thing that I'm going to do in the front yard is I'm going to divide and transplant after the rains, probably next week. I'm going to divide that huge mass of foxglove that's in the back, and kind of in a very rhythmic way, transplant it to other areas a little bit further out in the yard, along with the foxglove that is already growing here. So pretty soon things are going to start being really beautiful. One last thing to point out before we move to the back is, Stuart, did you appreciate when you came for Valentine's the other night that I had tucked some of the dried roses from that arrangement we did the other day? And I tucked the dried roses into that wreath from Terrain, so it looks kind of Valentine-y. So, you know, I'm just cheap, you guys. When I spend money on something, I want it to go through its entire life cycle and serve me well through the entirety of my possession of it. So I do think it looks pretty from the street, don't you? Yes. Okay, as do, let's leave on this and we'll do a quick run to the back. Look at how pretty those hellebores are looking from the front. And finally, it's a pop of some color. So now let's move to the back, Stuart. Well, Stuart, I will control this gate so it doesn't slam in your face. The wind doesn't slam it in your face as you're walking through. But look here, here's two of my large QVC pots, and I'm so excited because these are filled with tulips. I think these are color blends. I think they might be Dordogne. I need to go back and look at my records because my memory fails me. And one thing I like to do, here's a tip, you guys. Mr. Bunny will be going out pretty soon, Stuart, is when I plant bulbs in pots so that squirrels can't dig, a lot of times I will either encase and put in the entire pot into these mesh bags that these Color Blends tulips come in, or I will use them and kind of secure them, whether the pot is in the garage or outside, secure them with something to keep the squirrels from digging in them, because they don't like their little claws to get caught up in that mesh. So more stuff is going on back here. I'm really going to be trading out. I'm going to have fewer larger specimens back here on my back porch along with my topiaries. And here's a test. I wanted to see if I could get hellebores to grow in pots. And look here, Stuart. These have some blooms starting on them. So as long as I can grow hellebores and they are happy in my garden, I will plant them everywhere because I do love them so. Same thing back here. I feel like I'm being repetitive about telling you the things that I'm doing, and I do want to know what kind of leaf cleanup you're doing in your own gardens. As much as I love my trees, I will tell you that trees create a lot of work. And I adore these redbud trees in the back, but I am really getting tired of cleaning up all of these little dried seed heads because they are everywhere. But when they bloom pink this spring, I won't mind. Lots of bulbs coming up in here, and this is what I call my minor bulb garden. Here are some of the hyacinths that I had growing in the house. This one was in one of those hyacinth vases. I'm going to plant these out here and they will do just fine, and they will come up. You can see over here, Stuart, you're on, thank you. Over here they are coming up, and these are all ones that I planted. I need to get that out of your way, Stuart. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to knock you over. I just get so enthusiastic, don't I? That I'm not always careful. And by the way, if you are new to this channel, there are so many new people. And first of all, if you're new to the channel, welcome. But Stuart is my photographer, he is my business partner, and he's my best buddy. And if I have to suffer and stay up tonight at midnight to be on a panel on QVC, then he will too. You suffer along with me, don't you?
This is true.
Yes, I think Hubs invited you to just stay the night in the guest bedroom, so because we've got to do it at 6 o'clock in the morning too. Okay, I know, really. We suffer for our art, don't we?
We do.
This whole area, notice that I have not taken off any of the leafy mulch from all of these hydrangeas. I'm going to assume that probably those that bloom on old wood probably got nipped, but just in case. Oh, look over here, Stuart. Look, there's green coming out there. Now, whether or not that'll produce any flowers, I don't know. But there is some green. We'll see if it's still green tomorrow if we get a really hard freeze. That wind blew some trash back in there, Stuart. We'll get that later. This is another area that I'll probably start cleaning up some of the leaves because there's some little daffodils in here. And also the ajuga will start blooming purple. So before too long, this is probably the next area I will tackle to clean up a lot of these leaves. One of the reasons for leaving, I've got a combination of hydrangeas in here that grow on new growth, on new wood and old wood. And one of the reasons that I leave the flower heads on sometimes is to protect any of that new tender growth that's coming out. The flower heads kind of protect them a little bit from frost. I'm also looking now for things that may have experienced frost heave. In other words, the contraction and expansion of the soil as it freezes and then thaws out, kind of heaves plants out of the ground. So I'm looking for signs of that and tucking any of those guys back in. Here's more pots with tulips in them, and those are starting to show some signs of life. And then yesterday, back here, I really watered everything very, very well because other than that snow, we have not had any moisture at all in 3 months, Stuart? 3 or almost 4 months. And then lastly, I'm going to show you one more thing. You've probably seen pictures of my garden when I had an arbor here. There's a lot of pictures over the span of time in my new book. But there used to be just a mammoth old blush climbing rose here that was here for many, many years, probably 25 years. And a good bit of the original trunk, which by that time was this big, it got rosette disease and I had to take it out. But happily, some of these shoots rooted themselves into the earth, forming new growth, and so I am hoping that these will grow and turn into another healthy climbing old blush that will bloom. And because it's not planted in exactly the same area, hopefully it will not suffer the same demise. So that's what I'm hoping anyway. And boy, Stuart, am I anxious to get in there and start working on that boxwood. But it will come soon enough. It's like hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait. Anything I didn't cover, Stuart, that you've noticed that's gone on back here? I've got a few more Nandina berries that I need to cut back. Lots of alliums are coming up in the back. Oh, I do have one more question for you guys. I want your opinion. I planted both of those emerald green arborvitaes at the same time, and one just is growing so much faster than the other, and it bothers me that they are not the same size. So I'm considering this spring, when they start putting on active growth, to prune the tall one back so that it's more in scale with the smaller one. And I'd like your opinion on that. I've tried to help the smaller one catch up by feeding and watering it more, but it's just more of a slowpoke. And so instead of having, I don't know, I would prefer that they are more symmetrical. So let me know what your opinion is on that. If I should prune this one down a little bit more in scale to give me a little bit more symmetry through here. So that is my last and final question. Thank you for your service. I get so much good advice for you guys. Make sure to answer the question of the day below in the comments. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to share if you know other budding gardeners, new gardeners that might learn something from this. And most importantly, thank you for joining me on this Wednesday walkabout. Well, I am so excited because my book, The Elegant and Edible Garden, is finally going to be released in April. And to celebrate, I'm going to be on the Talk Shop Live channel March 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, to talk all about it, to visit with you, interact with you about gardening and this book in particular. You'll be able to pre-order a signed copy. We will be able to have a real conversation about gardening. So make sure to put it on your calendar now. We will make sure to notify you when the channel goes live. And again, that's March 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Make sure to put it on your calendar now. I hope I see you then. Well, before we get started today, a couple of housekeeping items. Everyone needs to welcome Stuart back. He took a little mini vacation, and I did the last Wednesday walkabout solo. A number of you commented on my audio going in and out, and that's because Stuart wasn't here to support me. So, as always, it was Stuart's fault. Secondly, you just saw a commercial about my appearing on Talk Shop Live. If you go to talkshoplive.com, you can scroll across and you'll see my face, and it will give you information about my appearance. And what I'm going to do is talk about the book, and it's going to be on March 7th. 6 Central Time, 7 Eastern Time. You can buy an autographed copy while we talk about it. You guys, this is your opportunity to really interact with me. You can ask me questions. We can have an exchange of just garden talk. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. So if you can, mark it down on your calendar, because I would love to have your support, and at least know a few people will show up. Secondly, and much more seriously, today when I came out to start working in the garden, it did not escape me how fortunate I am. How fortunate I am to be in my own home and being able to work in my own garden, when so many people right now don't have that luxury. And it's not lost on me how much gratitude those of us who feel secure, how grateful we should be for what we have. And along those lines, here is my first question of the day. If you would, I have started sharing on Instagram, and I'll share in the community tab here various links to different resources where you can help the Ukrainian people. And it's important to say that there are so many dislocated people right now. It's not just the Ukrainians. There are people all over the world who had to leave their homes, and they are forced to be away, in some cases from their loved ones, from their cherished homeland. And if there are ways that we can be sensitive and help those who have been displaced, then I hope we will take this opportunity to do that. So I will be sharing lots of links, and if you have any also reliable, we all want to do our due diligence that these are really verified charitable places where we can send our money and our resources, then please put those links in the comment below. Stuart, people can comment and put links in the comments. I believe you can. So if you are aware of different ways that we can help, please include those. And then by all means, as you are commenting, make sure you read others' comments, because you might find their information invaluable in terms of different ways we can help. And then finally, I was having a discussion with somebody, and I said, I don't know, is it superficial, is it frivolous for us to be talking about gardening and things of that nature right now when so much of the world is hurting? And while I could see her point, I think that right now it's more important than ever that we get out in our gardens, that we find solace here, that we find comfort here, that we really are aware of just how grateful we are, and that we need to share what we have in any way with others. So there is just my little heartfelt message to you guys, that we just need to all step up and do what we can. So make sure to check out the comments below and check out where and how we might be able to be of some help. So there you go. Well, I've got Stuart standing at a distance, and he can start coming this way to kind of emphasize my point about my 5 garden strategies, or how I strategize my pre-spring cleanup. Now again, I am no expert. There are so many different ways to do it, and obviously my question of the day, I want to share how you guys tackle the magnitude of all there is to do to get ready for spring. Before you plant, before you really start, spreading seeds or annuals or anything like that. You have to do a certain amount of just garden grooming and garden cleanup. And so this is how I tackle it, and how I kind of strategize the enormity of the job. But again, I'm no expert. You guys share how you strategize. So number one, what people are going to see first, since I live in a neighborhood and I get tons of drive-by traffic, what people will see first is obviously my front yard, and it's because those are the things that bloom first. So that is my number one strategy. I'm going to prioritize the areas that will be seen by the public, enjoyed by others as they walk about, and also those things that will bloom first. That may not be the case for you guys. You may live out in the country and your strategy for your garden cleanup might be completely different. But for me, things are going to start accelerating pretty quickly. Bulbs are starting to come up, seedlings are starting to germinate, and I really want to make sure that most of that fresh foliage that comes out is erupting and there's not a lot of brown, dead, leafy litter around it. So that's how I'm prioritizing that. And here's kind of an example. You can see over here on the east side near my drive, I haven't gotten to this area yet. I've still got lots of leaves and things in here that need to be cleaned up. Versus this side on the west, where I've already cleaned out a good amount of the leaves and I have top dressed it with composted manure. So it looks a lot tidier, and consequently, when the bulbs start coming up and things, they're going to come up against a canvas that's a little bit more beautiful. So this is another example here. I've showed them to you many times, but the hellebores now have been cleaned up some. There was a heavy frost, so I'll cut back more foliage. But for the most part, it's going to be flowering in an area that looks tidy and well groomed. And also it will not only look well groomed up close, it will look good from a distance. So for me, that's my number one strategy for prioritizing my cleanup. What is going to be seen very publicly by others, and what can I do to enhance and beautify the things that are coming into bloom first. Now let's move on to my number two strategy. Well, here's my number two strategy. As you guys know, my garden, and probably many of yours as well, are divided up into what I consider to be garden rooms. This is kind of like the dining room, and over here I refer to this as the bistro. And right now the weather is really beautiful. We're going to have some warm days where we can sit outside, we can dine outside, and we can enjoy the out of doors before the temperatures dip again, or before that heat sets in ultimately this summer. So here's my number two strategy in prioritizing which rooms I clean first. And that is those rooms that we are going to use right now will get tidied up and groomed first. So yesterday I spent a good amount of time removing lots of the leaves, cutting back plants that were overgrown or brown and needed to get just a haircut, so they'll start looking good a little bit later. I am not shearing or pruning my boxwood yet, but nevertheless there was a lot of things that I could do to make this whole area look a lot tidier and a lot nicer, so that when we sit outside I can really enjoy the space without feeling like I need to constantly get up to do some kind of cleanup. So consequently, yesterday I cleaned off my glass table. I shook out all of the seed heads and that kind of thing from inside the chairs. I started working over here in the bistro a little bit, tidying it up, sweeping gravel, putting it back into place, deciding where I wanted to maybe position some of my plants. So this whole area right now looks a lot tidier, a lot cleaner, a lot more kempt, because these are the spaces I hope to enjoy and use first. So that's my second strategy, is I'm prioritizing cleanup based on the spaces I'm going to be using right now. Okay, number three. When I was in the Cotswolds visiting Rosemary Very's absolutely incredible garden at Barnsley House, the caretaker there described what she considered kind of a foundational concept in English gardening, and that was that the things that are the garden spaces that are closer to the house tend to be more well-groomed, more formal, tidier, and require a little bit higher maintenance. Then as you got away from the house, areas became more natural, and they even described them as an area that they considered to be the wilds. It was not as well groomed, it was much more natural and looked like it might look in nature. So that's another concept that I think about when I do my garden grooming and my garden cleanup pre-spring. I start close to the house, and then I move my way out. So the areas that are right up against the back facade of my house or the front facade of my house will get tended first. The areas back in the potager, even though I will start working on them, I will do them later because those aren't areas that I'm seeing as much as I am these areas that are right near and contiguous kind of to my deck area. So here's an example of that. I'm starting to clean up, not all, because a lot of this leafy coverage will be a permanent mulch, but I am going to remove some of it, because as I'm doing my garden cleanup, I'm looking for different things. For example, I'm going to cut back some of this ivy. I'm addressing those things that need to be done. Look, I unearthed a piece of flagstone I can use, but I'm also going to treat this blue Atlas cedar and the other evergreens in this area with some holly tone. So I'm going to pull back that leafy mulch, and in this whole space, I'm going to work in some of that evergreen food, that holly tone, because I noticed that after all of the problems we experienced last year from the ice storm and the Arctic blast, a lot of these plants really suffered. And last year I was so attentive to just reestablishing the form and replacing dead plants that I probably didn't do as much as I should have to really tend the plants that did not die and that were hanging on. So that's going to be part of my emphasis this time of year and this season, is to really take care of those survivors from last year. So I'm going to start out working in this bed, which is close to the living space that I cleaned up in my second strategy, and then I'm going to work my way out towards the back of the garden. Well, as gardeners, we're very aware of the fact that there is a window of opportunity to do almost any kind of garden activity. And one of the expressions I'm most fond of saying is that here in the South, there's only two seasons. There's before the heat and there's after the heat. And right now, gosh, Stuart, it feels like maybe it's close to 75 to 80. Yesterday it got up to almost 80, which reminds me that the heat is going to be here before we know it, even though technically spring hasn't arrived and we still have some cold weather. But one of the things that I have a window of opportunity to do is to plant some of my cool season vegetables. And I'm going to be planting the different quadrants of my potager with leafy greens, spinach, some French breakfast radishes, and so consequently I am prioritizing this space, and that is my number 4 area that I am going to strategize. My strategy for cleanup is areas that I have a window of opportunity to plant, and that is these 4 quadrants. So what am I doing? I've cleaned up all of the leaves. I've top dressed this with some compost. I'm going to rough up the soil, and then I'm going to prep and plant these areas with cool season vegetables. So that is my 4th strategy for how I prioritize my garden chores and cleanup, those things that just have a window of opportunity to get done before the heat arrives, the rain comes, or a cold blast comes. So prioritize your window of opportunities. Well, my last tip is based on keeping yourself kind of motivated. And for me, if I can see what progress I've made, then I am more likely to continue. So for me, it's helpful if I prioritize the cleanup of those areas that are close to where I will see them and where I can appreciate their beauty and their progress. So for me, it's areas like my porches, my side porch, my front porch, those areas that I pass by frequently, and I can see that, oh, this window box still needs some work, but nevertheless, I've kind of cleaned it up and tidied it up, so I feel like I've got a little bit of momentum going to continue with all of the other garden cleanup and chores that I have still to do. So for you, if you live out in the country or you live in something other than a neighborhood like mine, you might have those areas that you see every day as you pass by. It might be by your garage, it might be back by your pond, but those areas where you sit and enjoy them, but those spaces that you see frequently from both inside and outside. So for me, I need that added oomph of, okay, you've gotten a little bit done, you're making some progress, so now you can do some more. So for me, it's those kind of little motivational things that are within sight that I can see every day that give me the confidence and the momentum to continue on. So there you go. There's my 5 strategies for how I prioritize all of the cleanup, the pre-spring cleanup and some of the chores that there is to do. I want to know what your strategies are. So there you go. You guys, I hope the weather is nice where you are so you can get out and get started. So you guys, here is a quick rundown of 5, maybe 6 things that you can be doing right now, no matter how much snow you may still have on the ground, to get ready for spring. Because spring, it just seems to come on all of a sudden, and we want to make sure we are ready to rock and roll. So I did this very thing this morning. I took all of my garden tools, all of my hedge shears, all of my pruners, everything. These are the ones that didn't need sharpening, but I took all of them. This is a great tip, you guys, to Ace Hardware, because they will sharpen your tools for you. So I just dropped them off this morning. They'll have them all ready for me tomorrow. I'll just go and pick them up. I asked them if they would also kind of clean them up. I did use an abrasive steel wool on them to try to get some of the rust off, because I am bad about leaving them out when I shouldn't. But they will take care of them. They'll kind of provide some maintenance on them, and then all I have to do is go and pick them up. You don't have to do it yourself if you're like me and you don't like to do that kind of thing. Ace Hardware, remember that. Oh, and by the way, in case you're wondering how much it was or will be for a pair of shears like this, I think they said it would be about $8 or $9. But to preserve all of your really good tools, I think it's well worth the investment to do that on an annual basis or maybe every other year. Okay, so that's my tip number 1. Sharpen and have your tools maintenanced. Okay, here's something I did just yesterday. It's number 2 on my list, and that is I fertilized my stand of hydrangeas, especially those that bloom on old wood, if hopefully they will bloom at all, and my perennial beds with triple super phosphate. I got this off of Amazon. I'll put a link below. It takes about 3/4 of a cup to 10 square feet, and I just broadcast it. Now, yesterday what I did was I blew all of this leaf mulch to the back. Then I sprinkled and broadcast the triple super phosphate, which, by the way, promotes strong roots, larger blooms and fruit. Then I watered it in really well, and then I blew the leaves back onto the root zone of these hydrangeas because we might still get a hard freeze. But that way I can ensure that there's good soil to fertilizer contact. I also did this in my perennial beds. I don't do this every year. I would say I do it about every other year. But if there was ever a season and a year that we really want to fertilize, it's this one. So that is my number 2 on the list. It's triple super phosphate. The link's below. So number 3 on my list of things to do now is order or start buying your seeds. There has just been a run on, well, gardening in general and seeds in particular since COVID arrived on the scene last March. I placed one seed order about 6 weeks ago and I still haven't gotten it. They're all behind because of just the sheer quantity and magnitude of people that are ordering seeds, which is a wonderful thing. And so I have started collecting all of the seeds that I'm going to want to direct sow into my potager in the back and into some of my pots, and also for my wooden box plantings of microgreens and things that we're also going to be doing pretty soon. So even if you're buying them from your local nursery, you want to make sure that you get your selection what you want. So buy or order your seeds now. Well, Stuart and I were just interrupted by some bird life. We just saw some hawks flying overhead. There was lots of activity and chasing going on, which interrupted me before I went on with number 4 on your list of things to do. You guys frequently ask me how I address spider mite and scale, and now is the time to start doing just that. So while your plants are still dormant in the late winter, when temperatures are 40 degrees or above, but not too much warmer than that. When it gets above 60 degrees, I really try to hold off on spraying. You're going to want to use some dormant oil spray or some horticultural oil. There's a variety of different brands available. And basically what you do is you just put it into one of 3 kinds of sprayers. Now typically, because I've got a large euonymus hedge and some hollies that I'm spraying and all of my boxwood, typically I will use a hose end sprayer. This is the one I got last time. It's by Ortho. And you just apply it, or you just attach it to your hose end, and then you basically just spray it. You put as much in here according to the directions as the bottle says. Always good, especially on dormant oil spray, that you read the bottle. But you can also use, if you don't have as large a quantity of things to spray, or as large an expanse of spraying to be done, then you could use one of these just handheld pump sprayers. These work pretty well. I think I may have even gotten this one at the dollar store, and for small scale spraying, this works pretty well. Last year, I fell in love with one of these Centurion battery operated sprays, and it's got a small battery inside. It does the spraying for you with just simply compressing the trigger button. It works great. Again, you will measure the appropriate amount and just follow the directions as prescribed by the back of your dormant oil bottle. And then also you can use one of these, Stuart, what are these called? Tank sprayers? Pump sprayers, again, for pretty large scale jobs. It comes with, as I get that one up, the smaller one up my nose. But it comes with a wand like this, and you just spray, trigger spray. Now, what does this do? Well, first of all, when you're spraying it, and I'll probably do a live demonstration when I get ready to do this in my own garden, but you're basically going to start at the top and work your way down, saturating the dormant plants. So your fruit trees, your evergreen hedges. I always do my small pots of boxwood that are sometimes susceptible to spider mite, my topiaries if they look like they are afflicted with spider mites or scale, euonymus in particular, maybe your crepe myrtles if they sometimes have a scale problem. And what it does is it kind of suffocates and penetrates through the hard shell of the scale or those little critters, and it basically just kind of suffocates them. So now's the time to do that before things leaf out. Be careful spraying it around annuals or anything that's flowering right now, but now is the time to do it. Horticultural oil or dormant oil spray. Well, this is my number 5 in tips. So many of you asked about how I control fungus gnats on all of my amaryllis that I force over the holidays, on my topiaries, on all of my tabletop plants, and really house plants in general. And I have a new best friend. It's these mosquito bits. And you'll notice on here it says also controls fungus gnats. Now, I want to give credit to somebody out there who in a comment told me about these mosquito bits. I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was. Please let me know. If you're that person, I will happily give you credit in the future, because this works great on fungus gnats, much better than a tip that I provided earlier about using hydrogen peroxide. And then you can also go into the growing season and mosquito season having this on hand. But all you do really is you just sprinkle it at the base of your potted plant, and then in the case where I've got things mulched in either gravel or in, maybe moss or something, I just lift up the moss or move the gravel away. I put this close to the soil, put that mulch back in place, give it a good water. This stuff is great. It's biological mosquito control, it's responsible gardening, and so I would put this in your arsenal of things for summer pests. Mosquito bits. I'll put a link below. Well, here's my number 6, my bonus tip on things that you should be doing right now, and that is, in general, assess your irrigation system if you have an in-ground irrigation system. I did that yesterday in my front yard, and lo and behold, one of my zones isn't working, I'm sure because of some kind of storm damage. So before everything leafs out, gets green, and it's hard to navigate the space, I'm going to have somebody come out and help me with that zone. Likewise, in the back, I want to add a little bit more spaghetti drip tubing to my drip irrigation system in the potager, so I'm going to do that now, and I'm basically just going to assess whether or not mist heads are being blocked, rotator heads are being blocked by some kind of plant that may be in its place. I'm just going to do due diligence in checking out my irrigation system. The other reason you want to do that is you want to call them early to get that work done before spring arrives and everybody's calling them. So there is my number 6. I hope you guys liked this countdown on what to do when. Well, I can't tell you how gratifying that is to finally sweep all of the mess, the dead leaves, the twigs, everything from the ice storm and our most recent snowstorm off of the porch so that I can start cleaning up all of this area and getting it ready for spring. Now, I kind of pride myself on showing you guys what it looks like before it looks pretty. And I do that for a couple of reasons. One, so that you don't get discouraged by how awful everything looks right now. Mine looks as awful as yours does. It's just the results of a really hard winter. But also because I want you to see how things transform over time and what I'm going to do to make this pretty and really start to beautify it for spring. Because before you know it, as miserable as this window box looks right now, before too long it is going to be resplendent, I promise you. I think I've got 50 to 75 tulip bulbs planted in here. There's all sorts of things. Sadly, all of this ivy, lamium, some of the spillers that came out of this really suffered in the cold. This is going to have to be cut back hard, but I'm not going to do that now. Today it's the end of February, the last week in February, and I'm probably going to wait until another week or two before I start cutting this off, cleaning up the violas, seeing which ones might need to be replaced, and then giving this a little bit of a fertilization. Now, the other thing I'm going to be assessing is really the situation of all of the boxwood and the evergreens that I've got on the porch to see if they have been damaged or if they can be revitalized with some judicious pruning, if I just need to fertilize them. I'm kind of just doing an overall assessment. So that is the window box. The other thing I'm going to be paying attention to and thinking about as I kind of dress it up for spring is watching how the sun is going to affect the window box now that I have so much more sun than I had in the past, because the ice storm took away lots of my shade. So things that heretofore I haven't been able to grow in this window box, I'll now be able to grow because I'll have more sun. Conversely, things that really thrived in the shade may not be so happy after I realize just how much sun this gets, because this can be a pretty brutal exposure. It faces south. So let me just kind of tell you what I'm going to do to start whipping my porch into shape. Now, all of these beauties that you see, a lot of them are topiaries that are lined up on my front wall, we're all kind of hovering down here behind the brick wall, protected against the southern sun and kind of absorbing any kind of residual ambient heat that may have come off of the wall. So things really, despite the fact that we got down to, Stuart, was it like -12? Was that our ultimate low, our record low? These things, for the most part, I'm pretty pleased, did pretty well. So let me kind of tell you what I'm going to do with all of these. Well, first and foremost, I'm going to be moving all of them off of the wall so that I can get ready to really style and stage my big urns that need a little bit of puffing up. One of them needs to be replaced, and this looks a little too utilitarian, I guess, too workspace-ish to have on my front porch. So I just got, actually I didn't just get these, I got them before the snowstorm. These are these beautiful Dragon Prince Cryptomeria. These are new to me, you guys. This is a southern living plant, but notice that they take full sun. Now, one quality that they have that I absolutely love about them, and before I say that, I should say these just really danced through that snowstorm and all of that cold without a problem, and they're still in their pots. So all I did was just kind of protect them here, made sure they went into the winter watered, but look at how beautifully they, I started to say recovered, but they don't even need to recover, they just performed beautifully. So some of these I'm going to be putting out into the landscape, but some of them, like this one, has great topiary potential, and I'm going to do that in a future segment where I turn this into a double ball topiary. So I'm going to take all of these and I'm going to move these. This is kind of my first thing. I'm going to move these to a different location in the back so I can start working on them, planting some of them into pots and just kind of playing with them. Now I also have them in a gallon size. Now here's another project that I just want to kind of give you a heads up, a little forecast about. I love the way the foliage of this has kind of a mossy look to it. It's got very, very tightly spaced, almost like a succulent quality to them. And I'm going to do something that I call button pruning with this. So I've got some little baby ones. I'll put links below for you guys so that you can access the links. And if you like this type of video, if you like me to show you kind of the before and after and how it transitions, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, give me a comment. I'll be happy to answer questions that you have. So all of these are going to be moved to the back. Now I have showed these Blue Point junipers. All of these started out as just little gifts from the garden, you guys. These were volunteers. The birds planted them and I potted them up, and they have turned this kind of dark purpley gray, and they do this during the winter, but they will turn a beautiful gray blue as spring arrives. Look at this one. I love this one. that I potted up in a hypertufa container. And all of these, I'll probably put all of these together maybe on my back fireplace in the back, but all of those, they have been enjoying the strong southern sun. They're up here because this gets strong sunlight in the winter time. On the back side of my house, that faces north, there's not really any sun, and these, some plants I don't want to go in and out of the sun, but these did just fine, and I'll be moving those to the back. They've had their winter vacation in the south, and now they're gonna go back, fly back north. Okay, another plant that I have here that needs to go into a pretty container. This is a beautiful Arizona cypress, and I'm just starting this little congregation, this little assembly of these blue-gray plants, and these will all be styled together in the back. This has also been on the front porch. It sailed through the winter storm just beautifully. That's going to go to the back porch, and then these, I've got a number of rosemary topiaries, you guys. These have been in my house because while they can handle it down, I have found, to about 26 degrees, they can't handle it any colder than that, and certainly they can't handle -12. So all of these I brought into the house, but now they're back out. I've watered them really, really well, and those are gonna all move to the back, maybe in the potager. And then over here, I've got one that my friend Monica, that provides me with so many of my herbs, and I'll put her website below, but she brought me another beautiful, beautiful rosemary, and you can see it's got topiary potential too. So I will topiary that for you in another segment. Okay, so all of these are going to go to the back. Oh, I've got another couple of waifs right here that are in plastic pots. I've got a lavender. These are just some starts. I'm going to pot those. They've been basking in the sun. All of this stuff is going to be moved to the back, along with, I've got a whole bunch of this lemon lime nandina, because I'm going to do something really, really fun with them. I think even in some hanging baskets. These also sailed through that winter storm. The interesting thing about southern living plants is I really, we think of them as being bred for the heat. So to me, this has been very instructive to see just how cold tolerant they are and how much cold they can really handle. So I've got a bunch of these. All of these all gonna move to the back now so that I have more space to bring some stuff in, and I'll show you what that is momentarily. One more thing. These have been basking in the sun. I went out yesterday and I got some red ruby, I think these are Ruby Perfection cabbages. I'm going to plant these in the front. And then I also got some curly kale. This looks like maybe it's winter boar. They just called it curly kale. And some of this I'm going to be planting in the window box to kind of dance and play along with the other things that are in the window box. So I'm going to move all of this stuff to the back. Now, I was commenting that once again, I am doing all of the work. Stuart the gentleman always feels kind of bad because I'm doing the heavy lifting while he's just filming me, but that's just kind of the shakes. It's how the straws were drawn, right, Stuart? So this planter right here has been here for years, and it has had this same ivy in it for years. The ivy took a hit this winter. Again, now this is probably going to get more sun than it normally does. So this might be the opportunity for me to put a new planter in here. This is just a plastic container. that I punched holes in, I set it in this rectangular large metal standing planter. So this might be the year that I actually change out all of the soil, change out this configuration, and put something else in here. I may also have to change out this topiary. These Green Mountain boxwood topiaries actually survived just fine, with the exception of this one that really got damaged by a major branch, the same one that did a lot of damage to my front door. And I think I'm probably going to take this one out, repot it, give it a good feed, put it in the back in the plant hospital, and put another one in here that's a little bit happier and more presentable for the front yard, if I can find one. If not, what I have done is just rotated it so it puts its best face forward, if you will. So I did that. And you guys are going to ask me about these two tours and where I got them. I got these a million years ago. I want to say it's someplace like Hobby Lobby or a nursery. I can't really remember. Okay, so the same thing with this long rectangular pot. This has Asian jasmine, which I think is going to make it. It has been in here for, again, a million years, but this was a record-breaking cold. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to cut this back hard, again, probably not for another couple of weeks, see if it is living. I think it is, or at least some sections of it are. I'll do an assessment on that, remove all of the dead leaves, give it a good feed. And by the way, if you're in any areas that experienced a lot of this weather damage, I was talking to someone at a nursery yesterday at TLC, one of our local nurseries, and she was talking about the importance of giving everything in our landscapes a really good feed this year. So I want to make sure to, I wanted to make sure that I passed that along to you. Okay, here is another Green Mountain boxwood that's in here. It has an open side on this side. Now, this is just the opposite of the other boxwood where I torqued it so that the best face was forward. In this case, I intentionally rotated it during the winter time and for the early part of the spring so that the bare side is forward, because what I'm going to do is give it a really good feed. I'm going to cut out any dead wood, and I want it to have as much light as possible to renovate, to really be beautiful. Stuart thought that was really funny. To really renovate and refresh itself. So I think it's going to be beautiful as all of this new foliage comes out. But in this case, I intentionally torqued it towards the light as the growing season really begins. I'll give it a 360 turn so that the pretty part, which is full and still in really mint condition, is forward. Okay, now over here, again, I've got this assemblage of plants. I will be doing the same thing with these boxwoods, the ivy. I've got some violas and things in here that actually survived the storm, but they're going to need some cutting back and a really good feed. I will give them that. And then just as I remove, look at my bare wall here. Now, Stuart, see how it's bare and looks a little bit simple elegance, I guess. It will be really gorgeous this spring. But now what I'm also doing is I took all of those away. Now I am bringing some pots forward. So I had in my garage, I have been forcing in pots. It's not really forcing, I guess, because they're not blooming that much earlier. But I planted lots of tulips, hyacinths, all manner of tulips in pots, and now I'm going to bring them up into the sun. I'm getting them out of the garage, out of the shade, and they've been in there so that they didn't get too much moisture and they didn't really freeze too much over the winter. If there was ever a time that I'm happy that I went to that extra effort, it was this year. But I'm going to be bringing in a lot of these potted bulbs and starting to stage this so that it will slowly evolve and really get beautified over time. I've got a holly in here. This is an Oakland holly. This is from the Southern Living Plant Collection. Yesterday at TLC, I was talking to someone there, Pam. We were talking about how the hollies in the landscape, in pots, pretty much everywhere they were exposed, hollies this year really took a hit. And she advised us, so I'm passing it along to you, don't do anything right now. I know it's hard to put up with some of the brown and the ugliness. It might be kind of a brown spring, but don't do anything prematurely, because we really want to give, especially our evergreens, a chance to revive and a chance to come back, because they may not be dead, they may just be still stunned, as are we, from all of that cold and snow. Then over here, I've got more ivy in these pots. I'll be training them, assessing whether they are alive or really most sincerely dead. I just will be assessing that and just doing more cleanup. But Stuart, if you would just close by kind of doing a pan that I've got, for the most part, a swept porch now. I was telling Stuart, sweeping my porch is my favorite way to procrastinate when I should be inside working on my book or doing anything else, but especially on a beautiful day like today, which we're so grateful for. My favorite way to procrastinate. So I'm going to get back to it. Thanks, guys.